On behalf of Scott Bemis, President and Publisher of the Business Journal and our gold sponsor, Colorado State University, welcome to State of the Cities. I'm Neil Westergaard, editor of the Denver Business Journal. We're going to get started with our program. Please continue to enjoy your breakfast while we begin our program. It is the Business Journal's privilege to present today's program, The State of the Cities. Of course, last night we had the State of the Union. I see people are mixing together, bipartisan spirit. Congressman Lamborn is not here that I'm aware of, so maybe he's boycotting this as well. So, well, like many of our other DBJ events throughout the year, today's presentations and discussion are part of our effort to bring consistently relevant and essential business and economic information to you via our weekly print edition, our daily report on the web, and in person at events like this. Everyone in the room, I think, knows how difficult the past few years have been. Let's hope that the recent encouraging signs of recovery, these glimmers of hope, as some economists refer to them, are harbingers of better times ahead. Today we have an outstanding lineup of speakers. Dr. Martin Shields, the Director of Regional Economics of the Regional Economics Institute at Colorado State University and a Professor of Economics there. Denver's Mayor Michael Hancock, and finally the City of Aurora's Mayor Stephen Hogan. So here's how we'll proceed. First, each of the panelists will give about a 20-minute presentation. After they have all finished their presentations, we'll open up the floor for questions from the audience, which I'll moderate with a wireless mic from the audience. So I think if all goes according to plan, we can have you out of here right around 9 o'clock. So before I begin, I'd like to thank our sponsors, of course, Colorado State University, and our gold sponsor. Please welcome to the stage Brett Anderson, Vice President for Advancement.
Thanks, Neil. First off, I'd like to say thanks to the Denver Business Journal for putting on this incredibly important event and for inviting CSU's Professor Martin Shields to present about Colorado's economy. I think we're going to hear some great things today, and it's a critical point, and I think it'll be very informative. And Martin, we're hoping to hear some good news today, so no pressure, all right? But no, in all seriousness, it's truly an honor, and we're very proud to be here to be a presenting sponsor of this event. The DBJ is an amazing asset to the Colorado business community, and we're so fortunate here in the Denver area to have such a high-quality publication focused on our Denver community. And I'd like to just acknowledge a few of the folks. I'd like to acknowledge the publisher, Scott Bemis, the editor, Neil Westergaard, and the entire staff at the DBJ for the great job they do here in the Denver business community. Later on, we're going to hear from two of our state's highest profile elected officials. I'm very much looking forward to hearing from Denver's Mayor Michael Hancock and Aurora's Mayor Stephen Hogan about what's going on in their respective cities, how things are going from an economic standpoint, and what they're doing from a jobs creation and innovation standpoint. But first off, I'd like to just say a few things about CSU. It might be a little interesting about CSU and the Denver metro area, and I want to make sure you guys all understand CSU's very, very deep commitment to the Denver metro area. Although our campus is located in Fort Collins, our relationship to Denver is multifaceted and one of the most important relationships that we have. Just a couple points to note is our freshman class, this incoming freshman class, more than 50% of our incoming freshman class has families from the Denver metro area. So it's vitally important to our student body. We all know how important science, technology, engineering, and math degrees are for the state's economy and for job growth here. And Colorado State is proud that we produce more than 30% of all STEM graduates for the state of Colorado. So we're providing a lot of the economic engine and a lot of the graduates that are filling some of these critical jobs here in the Denver area. Secondly, we have a huge number of folks here in the metro area. We have more than 45,000 alums in the 7-county metro area that are working and living here and providing a major economic impact. They're working in every industry, small and large, and many of these folks are leaders of companies that are really trying to spur innovation and create job growth. So it's a critical engine to Denver's overall growth. We also have a lot of important partnerships that are with many of the companies here today, where we're leveraging the research and the thought leadership going on at CSU to help these companies to continue to grow, to continue to get bigger and better, and to do everything we're trying to do is improve the state's economy. So for those and many, many more reasons, we're deeply connected to the Denver community. We're here to stay. We're very excited. And for those of you that don't know, we actually have a Denver location. So we're here, we're located just about 2 blocks away at 475 17th Street. And if you haven't been there, we'd love to have you stop by, say hi. We've got all sorts of facilities. We actually have classrooms there. We've got admissions. We've got alumni, a whole host of things. And we'd love to have you come by because we are part of the community. We want to be part of the community on an ever-expanding role. So we're very much looking forward to getting to know each and every one of you. Lastly, I'm sure you've heard a little bit about CSU athletics recently. We had a little bit going on. We've hired a new athletic director who was actually a key business leader here in the metro area, Jack Graham. We've hired a new head football coach who you may have seen a little bit a few weeks ago, who was in the national championship game. He just brought home a second national championship in the last 4 years from the University of Alabama. So we're very excited about athletics, and we're hoping he can do some similar things here for us at CSU. So I know I'm personally excited. I know our basketball team, we're greatly excited. Hoping, I'm very biased, but I'll say one of the better basketball teams in the state of Colorado, and hopefully all 3 teams, CSU, CU, and University of Denver, maybe can end up in the NCAA tournament, which would be a great thing. But to try to get you all excited about the athletics component maybe in CSU, we have a little table out there. I don't know if you noticed, we have lots of literature. We'd love to have you stop by and learn more about CSU and what's going on in Denver. But we also have a little fishbowl out there where we'd love to have you drop a business card in, because we're going to be raffling off an autographed CSU football helmet that's autographed by our new football coach, Jim McElwain. So please do drop in a card into the fishbowl, and we'll be raffling that off later today and get it over to you. And hopefully one of you will be lucky enough to get that. And they tell me I'm not eligible, so I'm a little disappointed in that. So, but again, thank you so much for allowing us to be part of this great event. We thank the DBJ. You guys are fantastic. You're an incredible asset to the community. We're very privileged to be here. Thanks again, and go Rams.
Thank you for the kind words, Brett. I appreciate it. Of course, my experience with CSU is as an undergraduate at UNC, and we used to go over there because they always had the best party. On behalf of the Business Journal, Brett, I would like to present this token of our appreciation for sponsoring the event this morning. So thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, let's get rolling. Our first presenter, if I can find my place here, because he has an impressive background that I don't want you to miss. Our first panelist is Dr. Martin Shields, Director of the Regional Economics Institute at Colorado State University and a professor of economics there. Dr. Shields first joined CSU as regional economist in 2006 and has produced a series of economic studies on everything from healthcare to clean energy to the economic impact of CSU on the state of Colorado. In 2011, Dr. Shields created the Regional Economics Institute to provide research-based information, analysis, and strategies to decision makers across Colorado as they work to strengthen the regional and state economies. As part of the Vice President's Office of Engagement, the Regional Economics Institute partners with other CSU resources, including the CSU Extension Service, the Office of Community and Economic Development, the College of Business, and the Department of Agriculture and Resource Economics. Please welcome to the podium Dr. Martin Shields.
Good morning. That helmet, as an economist, you know, that helmet's probably a pretty good idea right now. So I might be, if you win it, I might shake you down for it. Thanks for the opportunity to be here today. I always enjoy talking about the economy, and I really enjoy pulling these talks together because I do learn so much in and of themselves in that work, and I'm always fascinated about the dynamics of this Denver metro area. My challenge today is to talk to you in about 20 minutes about where we see the region going, and kind of provide a little bit of the lay of the land. And so in the sense that, you know, the President Obama yesterday laid out his State of the Union and a fairly aggressive economic development strategy, realizing the challenges that we're having today. And if we think about what our real challenge is as an economy, and what my real focus is going to be today, is the extent to the need to occupy the labor market, okay? One of the things that the United States and the Denver metro area and the state of Colorado are facing really significant job challenges. When we think about where the Denver metropolitan statistical area is 52,000 fewer jobs than 4 years ago, nearly 57,000 more people out of work than 4 years ago, and we face a decade of real challenges with household income. Median household income adjusted for inflation in Denver County is about 12% less than it was 10 years ago. So there's a lot of significant economic challenges that policymakers such as the mayors of Denver and Aurora and all the leaders in this room are facing as we continue to recover from what we think about the Great Recession. And just to give you a sense of the magnitude of what we've gone through, when we think about where U.S. job totals are relative to their peak and compare where we are with past recessions. This chart, I know, you know, I'm going to have a lot of charts, and that's just in my nature. It's great dinner time conversation when I pull out a PowerPoint and tell the kids about what their chores are. I know they love it. So, and they still neglect them. But that's another story. So when we think about what this chart right here shows, the jobs as a share of the pre-recessionary peak, okay? And if you look at the horizontal axis, it's the number of months to the recovery. And this is about the past 6 recessions or so. And the striking thing about this is we're 48 months basically since the start of the recession. 4 years since the start of the recession in December of 2007. And we're about 96% of our job totals as a nation coming in. Previous recessions, the worst one prior to this might have been the 81-83 recession. We dropped 3% of employment below peak, and it took about 27 months to recover. Here we're 48 months out and still 95% of our peak employment. So this gives you a sense of the magnitude of the challenge that we face moving forward. If we think this about Denver in and of itself, the Denver metropolitan statistical area, the region itself, about 96% of pre-recessionary employment levels. You can see that the region went into the recession in terms of the job market a little bit later, wasn't as impacted as negatively as the U.S., but still continues to struggle. If we think about this in terms of households, all right, and this is kind of our key challenge, is that when we think about what this really means, is that means that there's lots of people out of work and lots of families that are struggling. And I remember watching the New York gubernatorial debates, and this candidate was from the Rent is Too Damn High party, if you remember that guy. He was quite the character. But then I think, you know, really, in the sense that the unemployment rate is too damn high right now is the problem. You know, we've got 130,000 people out of work in the Denver MSA, maybe 60 or 70,000 more than we might think would be normal in an economy of this size. And so this is the real challenge. These are households, these are families that continue to struggle. I mean, you may be unemployed yourself, you might have friends and family that are out of work and have been out of work for a long time. And so, you know, as we move forward, we have to think about it. The economy is really about getting a lot of these folks back to work. When we want to you know, I'm not going to be just a dismal guy. You know, as you said, you know, my dinner time conversation, you know, my kids would be if I was like this all the time, they would be in years of therapy. But what I like to talk about is this jobs gap, because we think about where we should be and where we are. Economists have a term there. This is called potential employment, and you think about what an economy normally grows at. And getting back to our 1997 levels would be a great thing. We're 96% of where we were. But over the last 5 years or so, that our labor force has grown, our population has grown. So in addition to getting everyone else back to work that's lost their jobs, we have to get these other people back to work too. And you think about where we could be, we're 60,000 jobs below where we were before the recession, but where we should be, we're really about 100,000 jobs short of where we need to be, all right? And it's not just people out of work. This is lost potential to the economy. This is people that should be or could be doing something productive and are instead spending their time trying to find a job. And at the same time, their skills are deteriorating as they extend their job search. So the policy imperative really, and I know it's so much easier said than done, is to get people back to work. So let's think about a little bit about our economy as we move forward. All right. So I have my colleague Kyle Henley to thank for this. I don't know who these cats are, but they're an internet phenomenon, I guess, and so I don't get this whole internet thing. I'm kidding on that. But as we move forward, as you think about where we're going to be in 2012, the economy, as Neil mentioned in his opening comments, there are some glimmers of hope, and what we see is it's not a robust recovery by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a solid one, all right? And 6 months ago or 8 months ago, it was a tenuous recovery, okay? So I think that in many respects, if you think way back to August of 2011, you go way back in time, 4 months, and you think about the double dip, right? That's what we heard, that's what we read, and what was the likelihood of a double dip, and I think, unless Europe does something really, really crazy, I think that those, and I don't put it past them, but unless that happens, I think that the recovery is underway, and there's not as much of a threat to it as we think there could be. So if we think about what GDP is doing, fourth quarter of 2011 was pretty strong. We've seen almost 8 months, 8 quarters of recovery now. So we see 2.5% annual growth rates in real GDP, which are important. Not necessarily what we need to get all these folks back to work, but we do have a sustained recovery and an ongoing recovery. And the forecast for 2012, the macro forecasts are to continue this trajectory anywhere between 2 and 2.5% real GDP growth, with the real pickup happening in 2013. So, one of the questions I always get in these forums is, where are the jobs coming from? If we have limited economic development resources, how should those resources be allocated? And, who are the target businesses to work with? And so when we think about what this recovery's look like, and this is just one quarter, it's the first quarter of 2011, but it talks about, this is the job growth by business size, okay? And we see the 1 to 4 employee companies all the way to the 1,000 plus. And we think about where those jobs are coming from. The bulk of those jobs are coming from businesses with between 20 and 250 workers, okay? So when we think about where the energy is, where the dynamics are in the economy today, it's in these mid-sized companies with 20 to 250. And you can think about up in our neck of the woods in Fort Collins, the OtterBox company, which allows my kids to throw my iPhone around without too much damage to it. Making iPad cases and iPhone cases, and growing from a small company with a great idea to one that has nearly 400 employees in Fort Collins, and just over a short period of time. And it's these young, dynamic companies, not necessarily service-oriented, but that's where the job growth is coming from over the last over the last, as we started to emerge from this recession, and there's no reason to think that that pattern is going to change. And so when we think about who our target audience is for economic development, where some of the real opportunities are, it's in those mid-sized, dynamic, young companies. One of the things that we hear about in the macroeconomy, and this will be my last slide about that, is the Federal Reserve Bank is under a lot of criticism for pumping the money supply up to keep interest rates as low as they have been. A lot of people concerned about hoarding gold and the concern of hyperinflation like Argentina. And we haven't seen that, right? We saw a huge extent of quantitative easing, new money supply. It hasn't resulted in inflation. If you look at the inflation rate over the last 15 years or so, and core inflation is inflation minus food and energy prices, which are a little bit more volatile and maybe not necessarily true market conditions that we think about, influenced by other things. We're finally creeping back to what was the 15-year average in inflation. So we haven't had an inflationary problem. And what that means from policy, is that policies that are when we hear concerns of inflation just being around the corner and hyperinflation around the corner, we haven't seen that, and there's really hasn't been any pressure on prices in that way. So let's think about where the region is going and what some of the opportunities are. And we talked about small and mid-sized companies, 25 to 250 workers being the growth engine. And within that, there's obviously in some industries that do better and some industries that are going to continue to struggle. And when we think about what industries and along the Front Range are poised to grow, energy, of course, with the new shale developments and from here on north. Healthcare, which has been a strong performer over the decade, will continue to grow. Professional and business services, which can be accountants and advertisers and attorneys and others, we're seeing some growth in that. And one of the interesting things within that sector is we're also seeing some activity in the architecture world and in the civil engineering world, which suggests that maybe some of our construction and some there's some activity there. And I'll talk more about construction in a little while, but we're seeing some of these sectors that have really struggled the last couple of years start to turn things around, and then wholesale trade is another sector that as the economy picks up will continue to grow. When we think about the struggling units, government, as the state and local governments continue to deal with their own revenue shortfalls, what had been a sector that it was growing at the same rate of population is no longer adding jobs as they deal with their own fiscal challenges. Financial activities, and that's mostly businesses tied to the housing sector. We got mortgage and title search companies and others that are struggling. And then the information sector, both software and primarily software is struggling a little bit in the region and has been for the last couple of years. Now, one of the things that we want to talk about is the construction sector, because it's been the root of a lot of this problem. And one of the concerns that we've had is the housing market, and then the bubble burst, and with it new residential construction essentially stopped in the northern Front Range, or in the Front Range overall, and that's kind of, if you look at the, if you read the media reports, they say that the housing market is close to stabilizing. We've actually seen an uptick in new starts recently, and that's true. But the fact is that you can't really very easily have fewer housing starts than we had over the last couple of years. Okay, and you have to have negative housing starts, right? And and I'm from Detroit, and they do have negative housing starts there. But when we think about what this region did, not just in the 2004 to 2006 housing bubble, but what it really did over the last 20 years or say. You know, on a monthly basis, we might be having 1,200 or 1,000 housing starts. And we think about what we've done over the last 2 years, or last 3 years, it's about 200 housing starts. Okay, so 1,000 housing starts a month fewer than average, 12,000 fewer housing starts a year. So you can see why we don't have people working as plumbers and roofers and drywallers anymore, and you can see why the unemployment rate is too damn high, is because a lot of important work isn't being done. You know, one of the questions that we have, and people are actually starting to talk about, the economists are starting to talk about this, is the extent to which we might actually see the remnants of a housing shortage. We've actually continued to grow our population. We've stopped building houses. We have a lot of overhang. We still have a lot of properties in foreclosure. But now we have to start paying attention is, have we built too few houses? And I know that's weird to say that, and I can't believe I'm saying that right now. But that's one of the things that, you know, we're going to be looking a little bit closer at. And there's some signs that market's turning around. We've seen a slight uptick in starts. When we look at the different sectors in housing, construction and building, especially trade contractors, they're actually starting to add jobs. But by far, the housing sector hasn't turned around in any measurable way. Construction starts are still very, very low by historical standards. And housing prices in the region continue to fall, although not as fast as they fell 12 months ago. So let's think about, you know, kind of summarizing where we are, and then I'll go into our outlook for 2012. You know, the recovery continues. When we think about the overall economy, it's a lackluster recovery. You know, I was joking beforehand. You know, someone asked me if there's an uptick, and I asked what half an uptick was, and I think that's where we are at. We've got some little green shoots, or whatever we were optimistically calling them a year ago. I think that they're actually starting to emerge now, but it's still a lackluster pace, and still, you know, regardless of, I mean, I think the U.S. is, the economy here is stabilized, but we are integrally tied into what happens in Europe, and we have to keep a close eye on what happens over there, because if Europe does go into a severe recession because of the sovereign debt crisis, then there could be problems here as Europe's our largest trading partner as a whole. When we think about the unemployment rate, still going to be high in the region, but lower than the national average, and so that's an encouraging sign. But our real challenge, and it's not just a challenge out of the Great Recession, but it's a decade-long challenge, is recouping household incomes. And so we're not just focusing on jobs, but focusing on an economic development strategy that creates high-paying jobs. So let's talk a little bit about our 2012 outlook. This guy sums it up. You know, I wish I was, and I know my students wish I was the most interesting professor in the world, but I'm far from it. But when we think about going forward in the economy, you know, just kind of the broad indicators here. When we think about 2012, if you know, last year we added about 10,000 jobs in the region. Looking at 2012, maybe 13,000 to 18,000 new jobs, which would be a 1.2 to 1.5% growth rate, which is goodish news. You know, because when you think about it, 100,000 job gap, 18,000 jobs, 5.5 years at that rate to get back to where we should be today. And then you've got 5 more years of population growth, and you got to get back to that today. So wildly optimistic rates. Okay, wildly optimistic, and that was on the previous chart. Wildly optimistic rates. It's going to be a while till we get back to where we need to be. So mayors, get on that, all right? The unemployment rate currently 8% in the region. You know, we might see a full, and these are all highly equivocated, all right? I called the recession wrong. If you multiply my forecast by -1, I called it right. So when we think about the unemployment rate, if we have this type of 1.5% type of growth, we might see a full percentage point drop in the unemployment rate by this time next year, which is pretty impressive given a lot of the issues and the dynamics of the labor market. So, you know, still much above where we want to be, where we need to be, but obviously heading in the right direction. And then we think about wage growth. You know, one of the remarkable things about the recession was that despite the fact that you know, 7 million or 8 million people lost their jobs. Okay, 5 million people live in Colorado, 8 million people lost their jobs nationally. Is that wages continued to grow for those that were fortunate enough to keep their jobs, and you know, at a very slow rate, but you know, but it kept in pace with inflation, and kind of reflected some productivity and efficiency gains that the economy was able to do. But at the same time, we're not seeing a lot of real household income growth. Even though wages are growing, household incomes are not growing very much, and so that continues to be a primary challenge in both locally and nationally. So, you know, this is upbeat. I have to tell you that because you might not think that. You know, but at the same time, I'm quasi sort of kind of bullish on 2012 and feeling better about 2013. Okay. But it is indeed too early to declare victory. And I was talking with Kyle. I was wondering if this could be Romney defeats Gingrich, but you know, this classic Dewey defeats Truman. It is too early to say that this is over. That we've turned the corner and that happy days are here again. We can't do that. Our policymakers, our local business leaders, our individual small businesses, our education institutions, all of these partners, our economic development corporations, our Chamber of Commerce, our labor unions, all these groups that are in this together, all right? And that's the thing, we're all in this together, is that we have to continue to work hard to turn this economy around. It's not to say, okay, the jobs are back, now we can go on to other things. It certainly requires a much longer, long-term commitment. And you know, and the thing is, even in the good times, it's going to, which will happen again. It's essential for us to remain committed to helping individuals and businesses prosper in Colorado. So I want to thank you for your time. I'm looking forward to the conversation that we have. I'm certainly looking forward to hearing the mayor's comments. And if you want to find this presentation, I scooped myself by putting it online at our blog last night, this morning at about 1. So 12 cups of coffee later, I'm doing okay. But it's there, the presentation's there. You can get a hold of me. If you Google me, Martin Shields, you'll find me maybe second or third after the guy that from England that had a sex change, but I'm right up there. So. I really appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts with you, and I look forward so much to our conversation. So thank you so much.
Well, that was great. Thank you, Dr. Shields. I know I speak for everybody in the room that we hope that the optimistic numbers that you presented you're going to be right on those, and the negative ones you presented, you're all wet. So let's give everybody, let's give Michael another round of applause for that. You know, we have our two mayors coming up now, but first I wanted to recognize other elected officials that may be in the audience. I know the mayor of Arvada is here. If you're an elected official, could you please stand and let's recognize your contributions. And I would also like to thank our media sponsor for this and many other events, our content sharing partner, CBS 4 Denver. We really appreciate our relationship with them. They've been so good to us, having our reporters on one of their Thursday night casts or sometimes Friday mornings, and we really appreciate that. Thanks very much. Okay, now it's time to hear from the mayors. First up is Michael Hancock, Denver's mayor. Mayor Hancock was raised and educated in Denver, graduated from Manual High School in 1987, and returning back to Denver after college to earn his master's degree in public administration at CU Denver. While working on his master's, Mayor Hancock was also holding down 2 jobs at the Denver Housing Authority and the National Civic League. In 1995, Mayor Hancock joined Metro Denver's Urban League affiliate as a program director at a time when the economic empowerment and civil rights organization was struggling so much that the mayor's first paycheck bounced. Undaunted, Mayor Hancock rose through the ranks, developing a strategic plan overseeing day-to-day operations and eventually becoming president of the organization. After almost 5 years as president of the Urban League, Mayor Hancock stepped down when he was elected in 2003 to represent Denver's District 11 on the Denver City Council. From 2006 to 2008, Mayor Hancock also served as City Council President, and on July 18, 2011, Michael B. Hancock was sworn in as the 45th Mayor of the City and County of Denver. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the podium the Honorable Mayor of Denver, Michael B. Hancock.
Well, good morning, everyone. Are you out there? Good morning, everyone. Let me first thank Neil for the introduction. Let me thank my friend Scott Bemis for this opportunity to be here this morning, and for all of you for being here. I also want to acknowledge my colleagues from the city of Denver. First, our elected officials who just stood up. I know Chris Herndon is here. I don't know if any other members of city council are here, but folks who serve with me every day to keep the city moving. I want to acknowledge you, as well as senior members of our airport, Office of Economic Development, and the mayor's staff. Why don't you all stand so folks can see you one more time? I want to thank you for being here. Anyone else in the audience? Now, I don't know about you, but, you know, after listening to Martin, I needed a drink. You know, I felt like I just left a PSA exam, you know. You know, I understand the importance of the procedure, but I really prefer not to go through it and to face it. And I'm gonna tell you something, you have completely blown my perception of what an economist looks like today. You know, when I saw you on the screen, I turned to Mitch Thomas and we both looked at each other and said, "That's the economist?" When I was in college, our economist was short, squatty, hairy. He stood in front of the class, he chewed on chalk, didn't talk to us, he talked to the chalkboard while he threw his, you know, his graphs up. You blew my mind, man. But, you know, based on the information you brought today, I understand why you got kicked out of the frat house. You know, but if that was upbeat information, take me off the party list. I mean, you know, and someone turned to me at the table and said, you know, how do you follow that? And so I'll give you a little better information today. Here's my upbeat information. We'll top Martin's information. Broncos only lost by 31 points. That's my information. So I listen to Martin, and it's our job as mayors to be a little more optimistic. So that's what I'm going to do. I think part of what we're dealing with in our economy nationwide and here in Colorado, of course, is an element of confidence and the lack thereof. People have got to feel good. And I often think that one of the first lines of my responsibility as mayor is to instill confidence in every room that I walk into, that we're going to be all right. And I'll never forget, during the campaign, I was at this reception where we were, of course, trying to raise money. And a gentleman, a business leader, walked up to me in downtown Denver, and I had never met this guy before. And he walked up and he says, "I don't know you, but I'm here to support you." And he said, "I'm going to tell you why I'm here to support you." He said, "Because yes, we're struggling as an economy. But the reality is people just simply want to know we're going to be okay. And you project the perception that we're going to be okay. And, you know, as more than anything in the world, I don't want to let the people of Denver down, the people of Colorado down. And I know that Mayor Steve Hogan is going to come up here and he's going to say the same thing. The bottom line is we're going to be okay. We have a lot to be proud of here in Colorado. We have a lot to be proud of in our great city of Denver. and you'll hear about the great city of Aurora. Even in the midst of this very difficult, challenging, and yes, disturbing and depressing economic downturn, we have shown as a state and as a region that we have the building blocks to come through this and to be okay. When you think about the fact that we have one of the most educated workforces in the country, we have a culture of innovation and sustainability here in Colorado, we have a modern infrastructure that connects us to the world, and we have a commitment to regionalism, we have the building blocks to not walk out of this recession, but literally to kick the damn door in and to run through it. And that is the power of what we are experiencing here in Colorado. Denver specific, I am proud to say that we are first among the nation's most desirable places to live. Even today, in the midst of this economic recession, and even though Denver decided to embark upon its largest infrastructure investment at the beginning of this recession, we still maintain a solid AAA bond rating nationwide. Our housing sector, yes, depressing, but we're beginning to see that we're leading the nation out of the doldrums, out of the abyss of this housing recession. Wages in Denver are going up, and as we heard and read this morning, our unemployment rate is beginning to decline. There are 10,000 people in Denver working today in 2012 than were working at this time last year in 2011. I am not here to just give you a rose-colored perspective of Denver. I'm going to be very clear and very basic. We have a long way to go. There are still too many people out of work. As Martin said, the unemployment rate is still too damn high. There are too many businesses not surviving in our economy, and there's still too much uncertainty in the marketplace. Now, that's just the extent of my bad news besides the Denver Broncos. But over the last 6 months, we've had to approach our economy, and we had to approach our process around economic development in very practical terms. I fundamentally believe that we have to create a government, both on the state and local level, that has to be a better partner with the private sector. We have to be more efficient by removing obstacles to permitting and inspecting services. And we have to help our employers and businesses as best we can through the processes and the tools that we have available to help them grow, to help economic development strategies advance. You all may have read on Monday, I received a report from our Financial Structural Task Force, who recognized the fact that Denver starts its budget process every year $30 to $50 million upside down. We simply cannot sustain what we consider to be a great city with such a process and with such a deficit every year. We've got to get better, and we will. And I want to thank my good friend Bill Vidal, who, as mayor of the city, stood in the gap during the transition and also made the very difficult decision to appoint this task force and said, take a look. It's like lifting the veil, and let's find the ugliness of our financial structure and balance and why we are doing so bad. They came back Monday and they said three things. One, we can't cut our way out of this. We've looked at the expenditure side and we tried to do everything we could to help Denver come out of this just by cutting. And if we had done that, we would have severely impacted Denver's ability to deliver core services that we as a citizenry have come to expect in a great city. Number two, we have to look at revenues. Denver has to fundamentally shift from a product sales tax-based revenue generation budget to a service-based revenue generated budget, and you're going to have to make some very tough decisions when it comes to fines or taxes and fees in the city of Denver. It is time. And then finally, the Budget Task Force said something that Paul Washington, who is here as the Director of Economic Development Denver, has said since the day he took the job. We've got to grow the pie. We've got to find a way to increase our stance in this city. And so we have taken a look at the structural task force, and we're going to have to make some tough decisions. I'm going to set that aside because we're not here to talk about the financial task force, but let me take that third leg of the stool that they presented to us in the final minutes of my presentation. Growing the pie. On Monday, this coming Monday, Paul Washington and I will unveil what we call our economic strategy for 2012, Jumpstart Denver 2012. The plan has 7 pillars of economic development that we believe is going to be necessary for us to lay the foundation for future years beyond 2012. The first one is what Martin talked about. The one sector that is growing jobs today in our economy is small, medium-sized companies. And as a city, we simply are going to focus on advocating for small businesses and begin to put in some building blocks to help our small businesses get started and growing in the city of Denver. Let me just say this first, just 2 seconds. One of the things that I struggle with as a member of City Council and as a candidate for mayor is that we didn't have a solid vision and strategy around economic development in the city of Denver. That if I asked 10 people in the Office of Economic Development what our vision was, I would get 10 different answers. And unfortunately, we were kind of like a hungry soul going into a grocery store. You know how it is, if you're hungry and you go grocery shopping, you put any and everything in your basket, a lot of things that you don't need or want. And that's what we were doing as a economic development strategy in Denver. The whole ideal of this Economic Jumpstart Denver 2012 is to put at least a vision and a strategy in place that will focus our team and allow us to move forward with the goal of driving jobs, number 1. And so advocating for small businesses as the first pillar of our strategy is going to be extremely important. Our goal for our small businesses is to work with our financial partners, our banks, and other lending institutions to raise $20 million to invest in community development finance institutions. They'll be the ones who start by lending to our startups and small businesses to give them the opportunities and the legs to get to a point where they can really build a fundamental lending partnership with traditional lending institutions. We get this idea from pulling together our banks. And they simply said, if you play your role as a city and you nurture small businesses from startup to 5 years, we'll take it from there. But they have to have the fundamental building blocks to get to our front door. And we'll begin to lend and we'll partner with them. So we're going to stay in our lane. We're going to be a strong partner by advocating for small businesses and startups in this city. And we're going to help them get to that 5-year mark so that the traditional lending institutions can take them over. Number 2, business retention is an issue that, of course, business community has said very clearly, you must focus on helping companies stay here. We're going to start by very basically creating a lease expiration database in Denver. So we have an idea about companies that are primed to expand and to grow or maybe move. So we can be more proactive on the front end and communicate and build relationships with them. Paul and I and his team, his team and I are going to be extremely busy in visiting companies that exist in Denver. We can not only be focused on the outward, talking about bringing company in, we got to stop sometimes and thank all of you, business leaders who are here, and say thank you for being in Denver. We want to be your partner today and give you the kudos for employing our people today in Denver, Colorado. So business retention is going to be extremely important. Business recruitment strategies is a third pillar of our economic development strategy. We will follow a more focused business development program that includes identifying and recruiting suppliers, vendors, and service providers for the largest manufacturing companies in the Denver metro region. Again, we look at companies that have moved into Denver. SMA Solar, for example, responsible for no less than 5 new companies moving into Denver because those companies want to be a part of their supply chain, or they are critical partners to their supply chain activities. Folks, by recruiting the companies to Denver, we get a chance to turn our attention to the mid-sized and smaller companies that partner with them. But we have to have a focused strategy, and that's what we plan to do under pillar number 3. Number 4, sustainable neighborhood development, being very intentional about working with energy efficient projects and efforts in our neighborhoods, but also being very intentional about investing in the small mom and pop shops in our neighborhoods, and being intentional about making sure that those retail opportunities that exist in our communities grow and get stronger. One of the things that we have going on now is a retail strategy development process. And we hope to unveil in this year a whole new retail strategy for Denver that is focused. Something that we haven't had in a long time, that will give us a blueprint when we attend the international conference and say, who do we want to recruit to Denver, where do we want them to go, and have a strategy to attack it when we get there. Very intentional, sustainable neighborhood development strategy, the 4th pillar. Number 5, getting back to lending again, we want to try to pull back the cap of creating opportunities and lending opportunities for for our businesses, being strategically focused and working with our partners in the market. Number 6, helping strategic projects get moving in Denver. 9th Avenue in Colorado, Arapahoe Square, Union Station, Brighton Boulevard, National Western Stock Show. These are all the projects, including more, that are on our base. Growing the Opportunity Corridor from downtown to DIA, the Aerotropolis. These are opportunities to leverage new economic opportunities, to bring in international investors, and to really put our stamp on Denver going forward. These are transformative projects that if we can help partner and get them moving, it's job creation, it's investing for the future, and it's sustaining our economic efforts going forward. Number 7, and I know I'm whizzing through these, but we got a Q&A, and I want to get off stage so that Mayor Hogan can come and blow your mind. Number 7 is workforce development. We have to think smarter. We have to think more sustainable about our efforts around workforce development. We know that people have to be retrained and prepared to compete in this new economy, the new normal. No longer can we just help people with their resume. No longer can we just help them with finding a job to sustain their families. We need to help them obtain the skills that will keep them marketable for the rest of their lives. So employment and training takes on a whole new meaning for us. People need to enter into actual training, very brief, but prepares them with the skills to compete in this new economy so they can take jobs in the energy sector, they can take jobs in the healthcare sector, they can take jobs in the hospitality sectors, all which are growing in our region. Workforce development is going to take on a new meaning. And as Washington shifts its focus, as the President talked about last night, to employment and training, locally we must shift our focus and make sure we have quality partnerships with our community colleges and other community-based institutions, and we are training folks to take on marketable skills so they can be employable for the rest of their lives. Let me just finish by saying a couple things. We have some great opportunities that are going to be facing Denver and our region coming up. I'm very proud that DU will host the very first presidential debate in October. Very proud. It is the most watched presidential debate in all debates. I know we're kind of drunk with these Republican debates, but I'm talking about the presidential debate. Most debates. And so we will have almost a similar exercise that we saw with the DNC here in Denver come October 3rd. I don't want us to miss that opportunity to once again showcase Denver on an international stage. Over 3,000 journalists will be in Denver. It's an opportunity for us again to increase our presence internationally. We are hosting the International Airport Cities Conference later this year, and I'm extremely excited to put on stage the 5th largest airport, 5th busiest airport in the country, and the 10th in the world, and to talk about our possibilities around the Aerotropolis. Fast tracks, not passing the final funding for fast tracks is not an option. It is our connectivity to the rest of the world. It's time that Denver move into the 21st century with its transit system, and completing the funding for fast tracks is our ticket to do that. We've got to do it. It's a bitter pill, but I'm going to tell you something. What we will receive from finishing fast tracks will pale in comparison to what will be gigantic compared to what we're being asked to pay. And then finally, as we explore the possibility of the 2022 Olympics, huge opportunity for us. We got to be smart and thoughtful about it, and that's what the exploratory process is all about. I don't mean to come here and, again, give a rose-colored lenses. We have some difficult challenges ahead of us, some tough decisions that have to be made. But all in all, as a region and as a state, we have the tools to be awesome coming out of this recession and to take our rightful place on that global stage. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. You know, one of the glimmers of hope Dr. Shields mentioned, from my perspective, I've covered business and politics in Colorado for about 35 years, and I've never seen a time when elected officials from both parties, from all sides, are singularly united in the goal of creating jobs. Now, they may have differences about how they get there, but the goal is the same. And so I think we can look forward to that in the future as a glimmer of hope. Well, our next mayor from Aurora is Mayor Stephen Hogan. His career in service to Aurora began in 1974 when he ran successfully for House District 40. After serving in the state capitol as a legislator for one term, Mayor Hogan ran for one of Aurora's at-large city council seats in 1979. His successful run that year began a remarkable and unprecedented record of service on the Aurora City Council, 6 non-consecutive full terms over 30 years, ending in 2009. Concurrent with his career in elective office, Mayor Hogan oversaw the creation and expansion of one of Aurora's main thoroughfares as executive director of the E470 Public Highway Authority. Next, Mayor Hogan led the Northwest Parkway Authority for 10 years until 2008, building on his expertise as a transportation and development official. Please welcome the Honorable Mayor of the City of Aurora, Stephen D. Hogan.
Good morning. Thank you very much for that introduction, Neil. It's my pleasure to be here and to have the opportunity to talk to all of you this morning. Before I really get into my remarks, I want to do 2 things. First, I'd like to acknowledge my wife, Becky, who is here this morning. Happy to have her along. And secondly, as you all know, there has been some controversy early on in my term related to some disagreements between Denver and Aurora. And I just want to assure Mayor Williams that we're really not interested in bringing the Arvada Center to Aurora. So we're gonna go forward from here. If you would give me about 1.5 minutes, what I would very much like to do is show you a brief film, if we could. Hopefully. Now, thank you. I brought this along as an example this morning. And it's not just the message that Aurora is open for business. It's an example of the kind of thing that we in Colorado and we in local government must do today to help ourselves, to bring ourselves out of what we've been through for the last years. This particular montage was taken to Europe, and it was used in a presentation to help bring an international power weightlifting conference to Aurora and to metropolitan Denver later this year and next year. It's exactly the kind of thing that has to be done. But it's also the message that we, as a city, are open for business, and that it really is, now more than ever, a time to dream, and a time to create, and a time to build, and a time to lead. Because if we don't do it, nobody else will. Now, part of my comments this morning are to not only talk about what we're doing in Aurora and the state of the city, if you will, but some of the challenges and to go beyond just jobs, 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 because that has to be the mantra. We need to talk a little bit more about our communities, and we need to get messages out to everyone, because that's what becomes valuable in that communication and that metropolitan cooperation that we need to see, whether it's Denver and Aurora, whether it's Aurora and Arvada, whether it is Aurora and Commerce City, Aurora and Centennial, or any of the other 40-odd communities in the metropolitan Denver area. Aurora is doing well. That doesn't mean we don't have our challenges. On the doing well side, we're identified by a recent University of Michigan report as one of the most successfully integrated cities in the United States. At the same time, we have 4 school districts, not one. The largest of those school districts, Aurora Public Schools, estimates that at home in that district, the home languages come from 120 different countries and 96 different home languages. That's what our schools are facing today. And yet at the same time, Aurora Public Schools has adopted some of the most creative programs in the state of Colorado. They don't take a K-12 approach, they take a P-20 approach. And that includes programs such as Career Pathways, which involves getting students in high school involved in career tracks, not like the old vocational education that I went through when I was in high school, but getting actively involved in programs that are sponsored by entities like Buckley Air Force Base, the Anschutz campus, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, Prologis, Staples, the Denver Center for the Performing Arts, and the Denver Museum of Nature and History. Health sciences pathways, science, technology, engineering, and math pathways, business pathways, arts and communications pathways, and a Pace Setter program that allows gifted and talented and ahead of the curve Aurora Public School students to enroll for free in college courses at the Community College of Aurora while they are still in high school. Those are the kinds of things that we as governments and we as communities need to advocate. Aurora is not a city and a county. And as such, we don't have a responsibility for healthcare services such as you may find in Denver. But at the same time, as a city, we have responsibilities to address homelessness issues. We have a responsibility to address health issues and health access issues, and we're doing so. Those are the kinds of things that we need to do as communities today. We can't fix our problems unless we acknowledge our problems. The same thing is true in the area of law enforcement and crime reduction. Aurora has experienced a 32% reduction in major crime in the last 6 years. We are today identified as, by Forbes magazine, as the 9th safest city in the United States, of cities in population over 250,000. We are consistently, and have been for years, on the FBI list of the 10 safest cities in the country. Again, cities over 250,000. We involve a community entity that was created specifically to address any sensitive or potential issues, controversial issues, involving the police department or the fire department. We call it KCRT. It's a community response team that involves business, schools, clergy, and the police and fire departments. We've initiated foreign language-based, multicultural neighborhood watch programs. Those are the kinds of things that we as a community need to be involved in. And we've done all that with 6 consecutive years of city budget cuts and a balanced budget every year. And the only question that we are facing in 2013 with the city budget is whether there will be no increase or a minimal $3 to $5 million budget cut. That's our good news. But it's a city that has been cutting budgets and cutting budgets and cutting budgets for 6 years. That is our reality. But as I said, it's a time to dream, and it's time to create, and it's a time to build, and it's time to lead. As we're dealing with all of that, we currently have, in 1 square mile in Aurora, more than $1.5 billion worth of construction contracts underway. That 1 square mile is the Anschutz campus, the Fitzsimmons district that contains the University of Colorado Hospital, Children's Hospital, the new VA hospital. That activity is underway right now. Those aren't contracts that are waiting to be let. That is an activity that we are anticipating. That's what's happening today. Across the street from the Fitzsimmons campus, Corporex has just completed the first phase of a new 32-acre Fitzsimmons Village project with a hotel, structured parking, Class A office building, and that Class A office building is already occupied, and they're looking at phase 2. The Children's Hospital expansion is a $228 million, 10-story, 350 square foot facility, adding 125 beds to their efforts. University Hospital, a $400 million expansion, 12 stories, 720,000 square feet, 144 immediate beds with the possibility of 144 more as required. The VA is an $800 million contract for a new hospital, $40 million health and wellness center, a $20 million addition to the Anschutz Cancer Center Pavilion. At the same time, there's a $50 million improvement at the interchange of Colfax and I-225 that also includes the building of an additional exit off of 225 at 17th Avenue to serve the Fitzsimmons area. In addition, the city has huge opportunities for growth and the creation of jobs. As a matter of fact, in the last month, the City Council of Aurora has tentatively approved 3 new incentive packages that will bring 1,000 new jobs to the city of Aurora in the next year upon final approval. It's because we have tremendous opportunities. We have land, we have water, we have services, we have citizens, we have people. All good news. And it's not just all in Aurora. Our neighbors at Front Range Airport, as Governor Hickenlooper announced just about a month ago, are interested in a spaceport designation. That's in Adams County. That's not in Aurora. We are excited about that possibility, and we will do everything that we can do to help make that a reality. Aerotropolis, Mayor Hancock's offering, something we're excited about, something we want to be involved with. We are also focused on renewable energy, green jobs. At the end of last year, it was announced that General Electric will be coming to Aurora with a new thin film solar manufacturing plant. Production to begin in 2013. They were looking for a ready-made site. Aurora had one. It will employ 355 workers who aren't in Aurora today. Just out close to that Front Range Airport site, some of you may or may not know about what we call the Acre Campus. 1,762 acres. It is the largest renewable energy research and development testing facility in the world. Already there today are Xcel, Abengoa Solar, SunEdison, the Electric Power Research Institute, the Alliance for Sustainable Energy, Aminex, the Midwest Research Institute, and the Colorado Renewable Energy Collaboratory. And they only take up about 10% of that 1,700 acres. That won't be just a benefit to Aurora as it develops. It will be a benefit to the entire Denver metropolitan area. And that's what we need to think about here in this community, as how we come together. Now, I left at your tables a sheet on both sides, some information about the city of Aurora and some of the accolades that the city has received over time. A couple of them that aren't necessarily on there are that we're an all-America city. And a few years ago, we were named the #1 sports city in Colorado by Sports Illustrated magazine, even though we don't have the Broncos or the Rockies or the Avalanche or the Rapids or any of the other professional teams. And that's all well and good. But again, what we need to do is talk about cooperation and working together. We will not succeed individually in this metropolitan area unless this metropolitan area succeeds. And that means Aurora must help Denver, Denver must help Aurora, and all of our other sister cities in this community. Now, in conclusion, I'll finish with a couple of lines that I delivered at a Chamber of Commerce, Aurora Chamber of Commerce talk about a month ago. But it's true. It's true about Aurora. But beyond that, it's true about the need to dream and to build and to lead. Aurora today is saying to business, if you have a vision, let us help you to achieve it. If you have a dream, let us help you to make it come true. We are open for business. Our success will be your success, and parenthetically, in the end, we will create jobs, jobs, jobs. Thank you.